Hello and welcome to the Podawakens. This little series doesn't have a name because it's only one episode we're talking about. It's like one 6-episode arc we're talking about. Tales of the Jedi are what we're going to be talking about. My name is Jordan, and with me for his first time watching Tales of the Jedi is Logan. How are you today, Logan?
Oh, I am doing well. I'm awakened. So that is a good sign, and always a good sign, right? So, but yeah,
Yeah,
no, I'm looking
that's the
forward.
goal of every day.
Yeah, if you don't, then you're dead. So, yeah,
Yeah.
but no, I'm looking forward to this, Jordan, just because I had little to no background or context on what this series was going to be about. But um, spoiler alert, I really enjoyed it. But I can't wait to dive in and talk a little bit about it because it was fascinating.
Yeah, I try not to tell you too much about it. I think I've talked about it in the past, how it's like two
Yeah.
sets of arcs, Ahsoka and Dooku. I didn't know if you would remember that. So like when I was talking about when I was watching it and I was like, oh, episodes two through four are like really good. I was like, I'm gonna leave out that it's the Dooku episodes in case if he doesn't know Dooku's really like in this. But
Yeah.
or that we get to see like, before episode two Dooku, which I think is a lot of really interesting because I think Dooku as a character is very interesting. So, because we're kind of introduced to him while he's already on the dark side, we learn that he's Qui Gon's master, and you're like, how did this happen? Right? You find out he's Yoda's apprentice or whatever. So it's like a crazy character that was only in that like one movie because then he dies early, Revenge of the Sith, and you don't get enough background on Dooku. They started fleshing him out more. You get this show. There's a book or an audio play on Audible called Dooku Jedi Lost. Um, and that is that is an interesting little audio drama or whatever you want to call it. Um, but yeah, so I don't know how. We're gonna talk about them in chunks, and we're gonna talk about them chronologically. We didn't watch them that way, but to watch them chronologically, pretty much we're just gonna talk episodes 2 through 4, and then 1, 5, and 6, and kind of keep them separated by characters of Dooku and Ahsoka. Before we dive into it, I just want to read the credits and who worked on this. So all of the Ahsoka episodes are written by Dave Filoni. Shocker, right? Uh, Life and Death was episode 1, and it is directed by Nathaniel Villanueva. I think we've seen his name in Clone Wars or something like that. Saul Ruiz directed episode 2, Justice, which was also written by Dave Filoni. Episode 3, Choices, was directed by Charles Murray and written by Charles Murray and Elon Murray. That's the Dooku and Mace Windu episode. They have Sal Ruiz directing episode 4, which was written by Dave Filoni. He also directed episode 5, which was written by Dave Filoni, and he directed episode 6, which was written by Dave Filoni. All right, so I guess let's start with Justice, which was episode 2. Two Jedi are dispatched to resolve a hostage situation on a distant planet. And this is where we get a young Dooku walking into the cockpit of the ship, and we see a young Qui-Gon Jinn who is flying the ship, and they land on this planet that is pretty much desolated at this point. Just some fun facts before we dive into it. You have Corey Burton as Dooku. He voiced him in the show, of course. Liam Neeson's kid, Michael Richardson, voiced Qui-Gon Jinn in this.
That's
So they
fun.
got Liam Neeson's kid for that, which was great. And Mark Ralston was Senator Dagonet. Josh Keaton was the son. And Vanessa Marshall, who is a name we'll get more used to as we get into Rebels later down the line, played the village elder. But all these episodes premiered on October 26, 2022. Dave Filoni started writing this show during production of The Mandalorian. So what's your thoughts here with episode 2, Justice? Because we get like this young Dooku. What was your thoughts on seeing young Dooku?
Well, it's not like revealed at first, and I was really confused, and I was like, "What? Who is this?" And then I was like, "Oh," because then I was like, "That voice is familiar." Like, even though it's not, I was like, "That voice is very familiar." And I was like, yeah, that
Mhm.
sounds like Dooku. And then obviously I was like, I got too curious. I looked it up right away. And then with Qui-Gon, I was like, wow, this is amazing. So, but yeah, no, it was weird seeing, I don't know, he kind of looked like Adam Driver a little bit.
He
I
does,
was like, why does he look like Adam
yeah.
Driver? Just kind of like the
That's
longer snout.
actually his real he was not
Yeah.
Darth Vader's grandson, he's
Yeah, it
Dooku's
was wild.
grandson, actually.
But no, I when this first opened, Jordan, like a lot of these episodes, when they first opened, they felt very video game-ish. I don't know why that. I guess because like you know, how video games open up with like the cutscenes and like it's like the village and there's action going on. There's people moving around.
Mhm.
I don't know. It felt very like I just love the artistic form in this, and obviously, I think the cool thing about this is because this was produced what in 2020 was this 2023 when this came out?
It came out in
Okay.
'22, but it was probably being produced throughout
Okay.
2020 to 2022.
So like that gap of like when we've last left off with the Clone Wars and then seeing
Yeah.
this artistic ability where they've because Clone Wars was still kind of Clone War-esque, even though they picked up that last season later on. I still feel like this was a different kind of artistic way to do it. And I don't know, it just felt really good. And I just like I don't know. At first, Qui Gon was like that. He looks so strange because he doesn't have the longer hair, and I don't know. It kind of threw me for a loop.
No facial
Yeah.
hair.
But even Dooku, like having him with black hair, very Snape looking. Um,
And, like, a smaller beard. He
yeah,
had, like, just, like, the it didn't come jutted out, you know? It was
yeah.
very trimmed.
Yeah, but no, I was excited once I figured out because I like you said I didn't remember that you had said Dooku was in it. So I was like, oh wow, so we're finally gonna get some backstory as to how Dooku becomes a Sith Lord. So
Yeah, and I think these episodes really help show why he
yeah,
does, at least become a
hmm
separatist, right? Like, here's the main issue with this episode, right? The senator is from this planet, right?
hmm
The people of this planet have kidnapped the senator son. They kidnapped the senator's son. But we learn from the people in the cantina and stuff that the policies from the senator is keeping this planet in peril. And they're like, barely able to feed themselves. It is a rough world that we're looking at here. And Dooku is looking at this like, this is, how can this happen? Type of thing. And when they lead him to the barn where the son is, the boy is there. And he's being treated well, and he's actually sympathizing with these people. He says, how can my father let this
yeah,
happen to his people? And I think it's one of those things where we I don't know, like it's tough. Like a lot of times people want to put the blame of the sins of the father onto the child, right? And maybe that's what they thought they were going to do, but I think they were probably pleasantly surprised with how like anti his father he
yeah,
was when he learned what's going on. Um, I mean, and then the senator arrives with an army, and everybody thinks that the Jedi had betrayed them, but we learn that Dooku says like the senator didn't even know we were coming. Like the senator had no clue we were investigating this. Because there's this perception that persists throughout these episodes. Episode 2, episode 3, and episode 4, that the Jedi just do the Senate's bidding. Right? So they're like, obviously, the senator's son is kidnapped. He sent you here to get him. But that's not the case. The Jedi are still operating independently, and they're like, hey, we got to go look into this and see what's going on. And like, not let the senator know. We don't want any sort of interference or anything like that, right? But the senator arrives, he brings his soldiers, he orders the Jedi to arrest them, and you get Dooku being like, hey, our investigation is not done. And that kind of takes the senator back a bit. He says, you serve the Senate. And Dooku has, no, we serve the people of this republic. And I think that is the main issue Dooku has as he continues downward this trajectory of joining the dark side is, I don't want to say he's admirably doing this because he will do evil things to do this, right? Like we see in the Clone Wars him do some really bad things. But his main goal is the Jedi have maybe been too aligned with the Senate. He sees the issues of what the Senate is doing. They are corrupt. They may not be as corrupt yet as they will become under Palpatine, but they are still corrupt at this time. They are senators serving their best interests instead of serving the people. And I just really love how I think that's why I like this batch of episodes more than the Ahsoka ones, is just seeing Dooku and Qui-Gon younger, but also seeing Dooku and his ideals and kind of like almost validating them, but maybe still advising that he went the wrong way with them.
Yeah, I think you know what? I never really thought of it until you brought it up. Kind of looking at, which I often do with these episodes, as we begin talking, I feel like we have good discussion and it brings up something
Mm-hmm.
where I feel like looking at it too, there's such a distrust between a governing body and its people. And then once something like this happens, like it, now that you say it, it reminds me of, I mean, if you look at history, if you look at Russia, if you look at North Korea, if you look at those constrictive governments where they just kind of have zapped all the resources out of the middle class and lower class and have given it and kind of champion their elite.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what feels like, kind of the French Revolution too, where they push you down so much that it's like, okay, so then once that governing body sees, like from a perspective of like this son sees, well, this is what the government's doing to these people. I think there's such a human aspect to people seeing other people struggle and suffer. And once you actually, and that's the thing, like with political divide, with it so heavy right now across the globe, I feel like if you see the other side, or you talk to people from the other side and actually have where you can have that dialogue, which is very difficult nowadays, where you can have that human
Mm-hmm.
to human interaction, you realize just how much people are alike, and that kind of that hate, that deep seated hatred, or that ability to kind of try to oppress people, it kind of becomes uh it becomes this like idea and talking point of like, we need to get rid of this, where we need to make things better and improve, where we're actually a lot more alike than we thought. And I think that's kind of what this shows. And like you said, I think Dooku throughout these episodes, as we get further and further into them, he sees the distrust. Right, he starts not to trust that the Jedi are doing what they're supposed to be doing, which I think that's the same thing Anakin goes through too. Anakin
Mm-hmm.
has this,
Very
yeah,
parallel.
like where they don't trust that they are. And I will admit, I think it's very hard for the Jedi because they're supposed to stay these neutral, kind of these neutral police, where they're the ones that are the peacekeepers. And there's just so much, a human element's going to get to you. And I think in both cases, Dooku, one where he doesn't trust government, he sees what it's done to other people, whereas Anakin has seen what it's done to his people. I think that's very entailing of how they become Sith Lords. And it's hard to blame them. Like, it's hard to blame them not to get, with Palpatine being the mind warp that he is, it's hard not to get into that mindset of like, we're not doing what we're promising we're going to do. So why should I trust this system and not the other system?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's interesting. Whereas the Empire, of course, when we get into that discussion where the Empire becomes more of like they torture people in order to become successful, basically, kind of thing. I think
Yeah.
there's a line in one of these where they basically, I think it's Palpatine or somebody, um, or Yaddle, that say that no, like, while you might think the Empire is doing well by something, they're doing it at the hands of people suffering.
Right. And there's, he brings his army. The Jedi end up having to deflect, right? Because the senator orders his army to fire. We have many people die during this. And again, you kind of see Dooku slip a bit here. He starts force choking the senator, right? And Qui-Gon tries to get him to stop and gets pushed back. And he goes and frees the son and says, like, go save your dad. Like, you know, I can't stop my master, pretty much is what this is. So he goes and stops Dooku and he, kind of snaps out of it. But the kid then asks his dad, like, how could you do this? These are our people. He will not allow the suffering to continue. And I think Dooku has a line here where he says, like, I wonder if any meaningful change will happen. So even with that, he's still kind of like a little bit on the sour note. This episode ends where he's like, it's almost seen as a cycle, I would say, right?
Hmm.
Like, Maybe at some point the sun gets corrupt and he's worried that that'll just continue to perpetuate the cycle, and or somebody else will get elected into this position and do the same thing, right? Like there's this, when he says like, I wonder if any meaningful change will happen, you feel like it's supposed to be an uplifting at the end, right? Like the son has told his dad, like, what are you doing? I'm going to stop this. But Dooku kind of
Yeah.
ends on this line of just, I wonder if anything meaningful will change. Like kind of a dour note to end the episode on. Okay, so then let's talk about episode 3, which I think continues that vibe for this. This is called Choices. And the Disney Plus synopsis was Jedi Knights investigate the mysterious death of one of their own. So we have Dooku and Mace Windu teaming up here, two of Logan's favorite characters, on a mission to investigate a death of a Jedi Knight. This is before Mace or Dooku are on the Jedi Council. So they go into Raxus, where there's like a rebellion that was happening. The senator says that he went to look into it. The Jedi ended up dying because of this. And Dooku wants to see where the incident actually happened. And we get the guards taking them there. It's like this lovely forest area, right? And as Dooku's investigating, he says the senator could not answer a simple question of how many attackers there were. And Dooku blames the senator, ignites his saber. Kind of, again, you kind of put this parallel of him and Anakin, and it's kind of the correct parallel, I think, here. He ignites his saber, and the senator then blames the guards. The guards are like, F you, shoot the senator, and start to fire on the Jedi. But they're able to get them to stop, and they say, tell us what happened. And pretty much almost the same exact story from episode 2. The senator was becoming rich at the expense of the people and the planet, and they were going to force the senator to make changes. That's why they kept the senator alive. And they say the words like, Jedi are the lapdogs of the Senate. And you see like Dooku's face kind of hit this realization with that. And I think, again, it's just this might be what, like maybe 5 to 10 years after the first episode that we just saw. And he's getting older. He's starting to get gray hair. We're getting Mace Windu now. Like we're getting closer to episode 1. And over that time, he's seeing the same stuff happen with no changes. Like, again, just think, this is probably 5 to 10 years after the episode we just watched where the same thing happened. And his last line of that was, I wonder if any meaningful change will happen. Now, of course, this is a different planet, but it's almost the same story. So again, what did they mean by meaningful change? He probably was more talking about the galaxy. Maybe not specifically the planet they were on last time, but the galaxy, right? If none of these senators have real, repercussions of what they're doing, this is the tale as old as time. They're going to continue to become rich at the expense of their people and their planet. Dooku kind of doesn't use the best methods again here, and Mace is like, hey, the council's going to have questions. Will they be happy with your methods, Dooku? And Dooku has this line of, do you think the Jedi will keep peace if they continue to take everything by the Senate as law? Everything the Senate says as law. And that is, again, what's hitting home for Dooku is if they just take the Senate's word of everything as law, how will we actually keep the peace? Because what's going on under the law itself is lawful, but not peaceful. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Dooku's issue is. And to top it off, we get a very Anakin episode 3 thing here, Logan, with Windu getting the council seat instead of Dooku, right? This feels very parallel when you're talking about Anakin Skywalker. And Mace blames Dooku on that by the way he handled the mission. And says, I didn't advocate for this, but the council didn't like this. Well, obviously the council found out about the way he acted by Mace telling them, right? Yeah. So it's just, again, we're seeing this, as George says, it's poetry, it rhymes. Same sort of thing that happened with Anakin happening with Dooku.
Yeah, I think the rise of the Empire. I think we've come to figure out on this podcast. It all circles around Mace Windu and Jar Jar Binks. Those two just keep their mouths shut,
Jar
and
Jar's the key to all
it's the key
this.
to
Yeah.
everything. But like you said, there it is. There it is again. Like it's that distrust in the council, and there is a lot of that. And like you said, I mean, Palpatine is the head, right? So it's like, okay, well, we're going to trust Palpatine, and obviously Palpatine, we all know, um, unwilling to kind of cooperate with the Jedi for reasons. But yeah, like I think it's interesting just how parallel the situations are. Imagine that distrust that Palpatine has, where Mace Windu's like, you know what, I'm going to turn my back on you. Tell them what, and then he's not really turning his back on him. Like he's doing what a Jedi should do, saying,
Telling the
Dooku, you
truth.
shouldn't have done that, and Dooku being more self, and I think that's the other thing with Anakin. They're just so self-absorbed, or they're looking out for themselves and nobody else, where they get that's where they get into trouble. And it's like,
You know what I would probably describe that as is they're trying to do good, right?
yeah,
Like Dooku wants this for the people, right? But they also both have an ego.
yes, there you go.
And the ego
Yep.
is I should be on the council. I did this. Fixed the
Yeah.
issue. Why am I not getting that just rewards, right? But they do it under the guise of trying to heal their ego, but they do it under the guise of helping the
Yeah.
people,
I feel like if
right?
Anakin and Dooku are checking out at the counter at CVS, they're not signing up for CVS rewards because they just don't trust that system, that they're going to be rewarded by points. But no, I think it is interesting.
What do
Yeah.
you mean I don't get the rewards for this purchase?
As they're trying to do a return. But yeah.
Yeah. I bought all this stuff. I should still get rewarded for it, even though I'm
Yeah.
returning it. Yeah. And I think one of the best episodes of this, Logan, was the next one, the Sith
Yes.
Lord here. This is probably my favorite of the tales of the Jedi. This one here was a Jedi Master makes a troubling discovery. We have an answer for what happens to Yaddle, why she's on the episode 1 council and not in episode 2. We have Dooku, and we get to actually see him delete Camino from the archives. This is something that Obi-Wan learns in episode 2, right?
Mhm.
When he goes to Dexter Jetster, right? And he says, what is this? And he's like, Camino in, right? Cloners. And he points them to Camino, and Obi-Wan goes to look in the archives and says, there's no record of
Yeah.
this planet, but all the gravitational pull is doing this. Let me go talk to Yoda. And Yoda's like, I've been around 900 years. I don't know every planet, but you're probably right. Somebody deleted it from the archives. One of the little kids actually tells them that, which is, Dooku foiled by a 5-year-old. We get
That's why Anakin kills them all. He doesn't trust them.
yeah. But it's just really cool to actually see this and see him delete it from the archive,
Yeah, it
and
was
that
cool.
it's happening during Phantom
Yeah.
Menace. Like, if you wanted to make a perfect Phantom Menace thing, you can intercut this episode into the Phantom Menace and be like, okay, well, this is going on. And then when you get to Attack of the Clones, you're like, oh, Obi-Wan's figuring it out now. Like, that would be really cool. I want to see somebody do that. I'm sure somebody has done that, by the way.
I love that
Um,
conversation too that Qui-Gon's having, like with Jocasta, or like where Jocasta's talking about, that Qui-Gon's met in a Sith Lord,
oh,
where it's
yes.
like you said, it's wrapping it
He
into
always had an
Phantom.
active
Yeah.
he always had an active imagination, is what she
Yes.
said.
Yeah. I love that.
And Dooku laments that. He says, yes, something the Jedi don't have a lot
Right.
of nowadays.
That should have been a warning sign there. Like Jocasta should have been like, that was a weird comment.
She agreed, though.
That's
She was like,
true. Well,
yeah,
she's
yeah,
kind of,
you're right.
she's
I mean, what are you saying
right.
that? You're like,
Okay,
yeah.
dude.
That's one of those where you're like, okay,
That's like my
yeah,
favorite,
that's true.
like the was it SNL skit or Jimmy Fallon or whatever, when Adam Driver's on there and he's Kylo Ren and he goes, "No, he's definitely Kylo Ren." He's like,
Oh, the technician
yeah.
guy?
When he like force chokes him, or no, it's the saber. That's what it is. He goes, "Look, I found this saber." And he goes, "That no, it's definitely Kylo Ren."
Yeah, yeah. So we get Qui-Gon talking to Yaddle, and Dooku's asking about the Sith. He comes up to Qui-Gon while she's talking to Qui-Gon and stuff. Yaddle says there's no reason to cause upset, right? We're not telling people about this, right? And because Dooku's like, hey, why aren't we kind of talking about this Sith Lord? Oh, nobody has to know right now. And again, that's part of the issue with the Jedi's, right? Is that at this point they're still operating on secrecy and
Yes.
stuff, but they're keeping it from their own people because they're worried about maybe it getting out and causing fear and panic and all that kind of stuff. But then Qui-Gon goes away. He's got to go talk to the council. This is as he's going in, I guess, or just wrapped up his council, but he's about to go in and yeah, he wrapped up his council talk. So I think he's going to meet with Obi-Wan on the balcony in Phantom Menace when he's, there's like this little balcony in the Jedi pillar that he talks to Obi-Wan as the sun's setting. I think he's going to do that. If I just off the top of my head, that happens like right after his council meeting. So that's what I assume he's doing. And Dooku says they grow up so fast, right? Talking about his Padawan,
Yeah.
but and literally for us too, because last episode Qui-Gon was very young. I think they got Liam Neeson back for this one too.
I was gonna say
I
it sounded
have it
like Liam.
here. Yes, Liam Neeson was back as Qui-Gon. Bryce Dallas Howard was Yaddle.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah. And of course, they got Ian McDiarmid back as Darth Sidious. But yeah, so we have Dooku then goes to the tree. And I thought this was cool because we've noticed this tree a little bit more in the Clone Wars. There was actually that whole arc where, remember if like Qui-Gon didn't die or something and Yoda saw like Qui-Gon with Dooku and everybody at the tree, and Dooku mentions like Qui-Gon loved this tree. I just thought that was all really cool.
Yeah, no, it's a cool scene. This is a really great, like, again, this is where the artistic part of these episodes.
Yeah, the CGI has gotten better.
It like looks like the wind's carrying the trees falling as Qui-Gon's become one with the Force. So it's like that's such a cool moment, and having Dooku stand there and observing it. And I don't know much about Yaddle. Like I hadn't gotten to experience Yaddle, and so it was like I don't know. This was a really great scene. I felt like it was easily one of my favorite scenes of the six or 6 episodes.
Yeah, we have Yaddle arrive at the tree and saying like, "Hey, the council's leaving for Qui-Gon's funeral on Naboo. Like this is when it's happening, right?"
Like, dude, you're gonna be late.
And he's kind of like, Qui-Gon became one with the Force. It's time to let him go. And I think this is at him now realizing with Qui-Gon gone, I think Qui-Gon was somebody that could have pulled him back.
I think so.
To the light.
Yeah, I think all the Apprentice seem to be that way, except for Anakin. Like Anakin's the one that I feel like I don't know. Like
I think Anakin could have.
so?
I think Anakin doesn't turn to the dark side if Ahsoka doesn't get expelled from the Jedi Order. Like
That's a good point.
or like if she left the Jedi Order, I think she would keep him a little bit more grounded. It's that line of events that happens that just continues to push him and push him and push him away from the Jedi.
Here's a fun offshoot random question: Who's the best master then to the Padawan? Who do you feel like who had the best?
It's tough because everybody has failed. Right,
Yeah.
Yoda fails because of Dooku falling to the dark side. Qui-Gon fails because, I mean,
he set up Obi-Wan. He didn't set up Obi-Wan for any kind of success. I don't think. Like,
I think he would have. I don't know. I think if maybe Qui-Gon's the best one, actually, because he does have Obi-Wan. He kind of leans on Obi-Wan's. Like he lets Obi-Wan kind of do his own thing at times, right, and learn and
make mistakes,
try to tell him, hey, the Jedi are not everything, like I'm thinking about that line in Phantom Menace when Obi-Wan's like, Master Yoda told me to be mindful of the Force, or whatever, and Qui-Gon's like, hey, not all the time, like relax, right? But Obi-Wan fails because Anakin falls to the dark side. Anakin fails because he falls to the dark side, but he also failed Ahsoka in that thing. So I think they've all kind of failed. Luke fails.
I was gonna say,
right?
I mean, they all. Well, it is funny though, because like you could almost make an argument where even Anakin was a decent one because I think Ahsoka was good by all that she did, but she did get expelled, but not really her doing. Like I don't know, like Ahsoka,
right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I think, yeah, maybe Anakin could be considered the best trainer in the sense of Ahsoka turned out
Yeah.
good. She turned out very good.
The most pure of them all, I
Yeah,
feel. Like, the most
yeah,
and with skill that was I mean, I was Googling, like, Ahsoka last night, just, like, reading more about her. When we get to her character arc, we'll talk, but, like,
yeah.
I always felt like I don't know, but I thought it was a fun question because that came up last night when I was sitting here, like, watching and going, "Gosh, they've all failed somebody at some point."
Hmm.
Qui-Gon's failure was because he dies. Like, you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
he couldn't
Like
be the. He still couldn't be the
yeah,
guiding light to
right.
Anakin. Like if Qui Gon, Filoni has said this, right? If Qui Gon survives, Anakin doesn't fall to the dark
Because
side.
he's Anakin's master too. Like, he would be both,
Yes,
right?
and
Yeah.
he would be able to balance him. Yeah, Obi-Wan would have became a
Right.
Jedi Knight like he did anyway. He
Yeah.
was saying, "You're ready for the trials. I will take the
Yeah.
boy and I'll train him." And I think that's why it's called the Duel of the
Yeah.
Fates, right? Like that
Hmm.
song at the end with Darth Maul and
Right.
stuff. Filoni says like while they win that battle
They lose the war.
in the sense of like Obi-Wan defeating Darth Maul in that moment, but they've actually lost the Duel of the Fates because Qui-Gon
That's
dies.
a good
And
point.
now Anakin is on this path to fall to the dark side. So very how that all hinges on that. But Dooku is heading towards his ship. We have Yaddle following him. He lands in the space hangar where he's always meeting with Palpatine, and you know, Dooku says like, "You allowed Maul to kill him," and he's like, "All in service of our greater goals." And Dooku's like, he could have been a good ally, right? Because he thinks he could have turned Qui Gon onto this because Qui Gon is a maverick like him and stuff, right? And he says, "I've betrayed everyone and everything I've ever known." And then Yaddle shows herself and it's like, "Hey, whatever your crimes are, help me now." And they're forgiven. Prove your loyal. You're like, you can make up for it now by bringing him to justice. And Sidious is just like, "Prove your loyalty by killing her." And
Palpatine's such a big picture kind of guy.
yeah, he is. And Dooku's like, "I'm afraid it's too late," and they fight. And she's trying to say, "Hey, I'm actually on your side, Dooku. I've stepped down from the council. I see that we're doing like his conversation with her actually hit,
Hmm.
but it's still too
Yeah.
late at that point because he's been pushed and pushed and pushed after years and years and years, and he crushes her with the door. You think she's dead at this point, and then she raises it up, and then he has to kill her, and it's just Yaddle's dead, and we now know why. Dooku kills her. This is right at the end of Phantom Menace, and I just love this episode so much. I think I love it because of that intersecting stuff, and it's kind of reminds me of the last four of season 7 of the Clone Wars, where it's like intersecting with Revenge of the Sith,
Mhm.
and we're going in and out of stuff. I really like that.
Yeah, I love this. I love Clone Wars for that reason, and I'm sure Rebels will be the same way. And like, I just love or Tales of the Empire. Like, it's such a nice like branching out of canon, but also staying within canon and like trying to figure out how can we tell these stories because there's just not enough room in those movies to tell stories of the people that we're fascinated with, and fans they gravitate towards kind of like these odd like you and Plo Koon and like just like I feel like
Kit
yeah, Kit
Fisto and all
Fisto,
that. Yeah.
like, it's just, like, you get so drawn into some of these characters that you wish you knew more about, like Han Solo, like, like, that kinda stuff, Lando, and you get all, like, these branching off of different things, and I don't know, I really enjoy that. So I feel like this does a really nice job because we're getting context as to how Dooku became who he is and where he exists. Because you forget like Phantom, like that's when Dooku's starting to really have these internal struggles and battles of like he's just like Anakin, like he's having these before Anakin has these, and and Palpatine's done that with everybody he's run across. He's that same exact thing where he focuses on something that he knows is your weakness and goes after it to convince you that he's the one that can help you through that, not the Jedi.
The guy that's going to be the worst for the people in the galaxy is somehow convincing you
Yeah,
that they are the
yeah.
best, right? Like I really don't think Sidious. I don't think Dooku wanted an empire. He
No.
just wanted the Separatists to
Yep.
win, right? And it becomes even worse when he realizes, oh, the Separatists are not the side Sidious is actually on. He's on the Republic side. He's going to consolidate this into an empire. And he just has this whole look on his face when he learns that he's been fooled the whole time. When Sidious tells Anakin to kill him, he's like, that face that Christopher Lee makes as Dooku is like,
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I just got
Right.
played.
I got punked.
And he didn't even know
Yeah.
it. Oh, jeez. Yeah, it's
Every
terrible.
great dictator, Jordan, convinces people that they don't start out as dictators. I think that's what people don't realize. They start out as people
Right.
promising you a better tomorrow. And to do
Yeah.
that, it doesn't mean we have to crush the other side. It just means we have to be better than the other side. And then once they gain enough power and can convince people that's the way they should do things, that's when dictators become dangerous because they've convinced you and now they've shown you that yeah we are doing better. Well, yeah, you're doing better because you're on their side, so they're like, here is a better
Mm-hmm.
world that you were not living in, and you fall into that mindset, and then you start to try to inflict that upon people, and then when they don't agree with you, that's when it starts to get violent.
Mm. Best batch of the episodes, the Dooku ones.
They're
I
so
loved
good.
all three of these, and yeah.
Like, do you, like before you've watched all these, Jordan, did you know like some of their backstories from like books and having read some of their stories?
Yeah, like the Dooku one, like some people think there's inconsistencies with that audio drama I was talking about, but really, like, it's not spelled out enough. This all can fit. Like, I listened to that audio drama. This can all fit into that. And what I mean by that is the um fact that he was in the archives
Hmm.
again, because he'd actually already left the order at this point,
Okay.
Dooku, to become the Count of Sereno, which is why he's known as Count Dooku at
Oh
that point.
yeah.
Um, he was originally grew up in a royalty family, joined the Jedi, and then um, his parents, died and stuff. So he inherited being the Count of Sereno, and then goes back to his palace and stuff, and becomes a count, and then starts forming the Separatists and all that. But he was already out of the order at this point. But really, they don't act like he's in the order here. Like, he's it sounds like he's just visiting, because he's like telling Qui-Gon, like, "Hey, I've never even met Obi-Wan. Like, I'd like to meet him sometime." And like, he's going to turn off the. Like, I think he's one of those people where they didn't know he was falling to the dark side, right? So they just think he left, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool. He visits every so often. Like, that's cool." And they just didn't really think about, like, if he had
Yeah.
fallen, like the stuff he can get into, deleting a planet from the archive. So I still think all that
Yeah.
fits. But at this time, no, like, this stuff was not really. This is kind of the first time we really see a lot of this stuff with Dooku. So this was all pretty brand new stuff. Yaddle, I think we did know she died, but she had died differently in the old expanded universe before the Disney purchase. Because I remember her dying in one of my little Jedi Apprentice
Oh,
books,
okay.
which took place before episode one. No, she died in the Jedi Quest books, which was between 1 and 2. And she like sacrificed herself or whatever, turned into a Force ghost type thing, whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, they kind of retcon that with this, which I think is much better. But okay, and then with the Ahsoka arc, this one will be a little quicker, I think, because there's not as much to dive into. We get baby Ahsoka though, right? We got baby Yoda, we got baby Ahsoka, we have baby everybody now. But her mother goes and takes her to hunt, and she kills one of the animals, and during this time there's a predator, like leopard, saber-tooth tiger
Yeah.
almost, right? I called him a cheetah in my
Mhm.
notes.
Tyreek, yep.
Um, yeah, and attacks. Ahsoka's mom tries to save her, but the townsfolk arrive. Hold on. But as the townsfolk arrive, the cheetah takes Ahsoka, and Ahsoka like touches his nose and is using the Force here, to kind of calm the cheetah down. And she comes back riding on the cheetah, which I thought was really cool. A little baby Ahsoka just riding this cheetah in, and everybody being like, "Oh my god!" And this is when I think they realize how strong she is in the Force, and that she's going to go off to the Jedi. But uh, what was your thoughts on the first episode here? Because this is the one that kicks it all off.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me, they're called Togruta. Is that what they're called? Those people? I think that's how you pronounce
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
Ahsoka's race.
So Ahsoka, like I found it fascinating, and I think it kind of plays into her show too, and like her ways of becoming a Jedi and having to deal with it. Like her mom is like taking her as a child and going, "No, you need to see death." Like it's such a wild like concept. Like
Mhm.
imagine taking Landon to somewhere and shooting an animal and going, "You need to see this, kid. Like you need to see death." It's an interesting way to kind of, I mean, you
I felt bad for the
right,
animal. I
right, me
was like,
too. I was like,
"No.
make it like a scary looking beast thing, and then
No, it's
it
this
was
beautiful
just yeah,
deer type
it looked like a
thing,
goat.
gazelle or
I was
something."
like, oh man,
Yeah.
but like imagine that's the way that a race teaches you how to deal with death. And I know every race and everywhere in the world views death in a
And
different way.
species,
Yeah,
yeah.
but like that is brutal, and like Ahsoka's just, but everything is told through her eyes. Like Ahsoka is
Yeah.
very, like I feel like a lot of her story is told through her eyes and like the visions that she has, which is kind of probably why they play to that. But yeah, no, yeah, it was wild. But like Jordan, this again, this is the first episode, and it pans in on that beautiful village, and it's like the
Mhm.
lights and everything. I was like, it felt very like Red Dead. Like it just felt very like cinematic
You're
in
like,
a way that,
"When's Arthur
right,
Morgan
Arthur
showing up?"
Morgan's gotta show up. I mean, he'd be all game for shooting things, but
Yeah. He'd be like, "I'm gonna make this a fur coat."
right, so but yeah, no, this I loved, that they introduced Baby Ahsoka. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, this was, I forgot to mention this. This was episode 1, a child goes through a rite of passage with unexpected results. Then we get episode 5, practice makes perfect. A Jedi Padawan is giving seemingly impossible exercise. This is all really cool too. So we
Mhm,
get Obi-Wan and Anakin watching Ahsoka practice. There's a little boy in this scene named Caleb that we will see again next time. And then we will see him again later on. But he's watching, he like looks at his master like, whoa, she's killing this, right? And then we have a new model of Obi-Wan that looks like his episode 2 haircut.
mhm,
So this takes place, obviously probably right after the movie, where she gets introduced to those two. Right
yep,
after the Clone Wars
yep,
movie when she gets introduced. But I think it's funny, his hair was like not that in the Clone Wars series, but I just love that they're trying to fit it in more with the episode 2 haircut for Attack of the Clones. Anakin's kind of unimpressed during all this, right? And he says, I'm going to train Ahsoka in a different way. And he takes her to Rex and it's like, you're going to face the clones with the stun guns, right? And she fails multiple times. And how many times he keeps saying, get up, redo it. And she complains. She says, the droids are not half as good as Rex and his men. And he says, that's the point. I want you to be ready for something bigger
mhm,
than what the droids can provide, right? Like, I don't want you to just be good enough for the droids. I want you to be good enough to face whatever. And it kind of reminds me of like if I'm going to take Landon outside. I'm going to throw him 99-mile-an-hour pitches. And just be like, look,
you're gonna be ready.
I know your kids are only throwing
Yeah,
30 or hitting off of a tee, but I need you to be ready for the
yeah,
pros. That's kind of what Anakin's doing here. And it comes in handy. She passes the trial, but guess what? This is actually the same exact move that she uses in the Clone Wars final arc to beat the
mhm,
clones. I've seen people do the side by sides and stuff. It's really cool, and they kind of hint to it at the end when they do a flash forward a bit. And Rex is like, "Hey, let's hope all that training
yeah,
paid off, right?" And they go in, and
that was
you see a
cool.
little different angle of it.
Yeah,
It
that was
was,
really
wasn't
cool.
it?
I just love that. Like they're so good. Filoni's so good at doing this though. Like I feel like he's able to do things with this universe that not many can do. Like the storytelling in behind it. Like Favreau does the
Mhm.
same thing, but like they're both very good storytellers. I'm like, just give Dave and like Favreau, like just let them, you know. But
Let him
let them
cook.
do it. Yeah, let them cook. Let them do it.
And then episode 6 was called Resolve, and this kind of ends the Ahsoka stuff. A former Jedi is faced with the truth that they cannot be something they are not. And we start off this episode at Padme's funeral.
That was
I
wild.
kind of forgot about
Yeah, that
this.
was
I
wild.
forgot that it started there. And we get to see Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, and Ahsoka is, in hiding, watching this funeral procession. And Bail meets with her and says, "You shouldn't have come here." He helps her escape back to her ship, and he's like, "Hey, if you need anything, contact me with this." No surprise, that'll come up again at some point. Ahsoka then meets up with Rex, who's at the ship, and they leave. So this got to take place right after they got off the snow planet in the end of
Yeah.
Clone Wars. When they escaped.
Yeah. Well, the one of the best lines I think of the whole series was in this when Bale turns to her, and Bale I think kind of feels the same way when he says it to her. I think he's gotten to the point where he's accepted it, but he's like, "There's nothing you could have done to save either of them," and that was such a
Yeah.
cool moment because like what's happened with Anakin, what's happened with Padme, like it just like there's this I don't know, there's like this sense where and you get that through Ahsoka's show where she's not yet forgiven herself for the things that have happened with Anakin and the things like she feels like she's wearing the burden like Anakin Padme happened because of Anakin, but I think Ahsoka because she was close with both of them feels like that happened because of me because I didn't know what was going on
Because I
with Anakin.
left.
Yeah,
I stepped
right.
away. I could have held him to the light,
Yes.
right? Like this is the type of stuff that
Yeah.
she's going through. Then we kind of get like this farming settlement on a new planet. She's working in the field, and we get an Inquisitor showing up. In a book that's coming out later this month, they finally named this Inquisitor. He is the first brother. And he's like, "You're supposed to be dead, Ahsoka Tano," and she defeats him pretty easily.
I thought he
He looks badass,
well,
but
yeah.
he dies
He
pretty
kind of
easily.
looked like Grievous with a lightsaber, like with the actual human body, kind of like that weird.
Yeah, kind of like his
Yeah.
face mask type
But I was
thing.
gonna
Yeah.
text you because it was late because I watched these all last night after I thought I wasn't going to. I just got through like half of them. I was like, I got to keep watching. So
And they're pretty
they
short.
are
Like some of them are like the
18
Dooku
minutes.
ones are like
Yeah,
15 minutes
yeah,
with
right.
credits. So you're looking at maybe like 12, but they fit a lot
Yeah.
in
But
for
I
the
was
most
gonna
part.
text you because it's like that saber. I was like, that's got to be a brother. Like the brother and sister have that weird like. But I
Yeah, the
love how
circular.
Ahsoka
Yeah.
destroys him. It's like she grabs the middle of his saber and like uses the force, and he just like completely like she shuts it off.
Turns to
I was like,
dust, man.
dang, and he just like, and then I like how the face kind of like looks like a balloon, like the life just goes out of it. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
whoa, but
I know. I wonder what
I
species he
don't
is
know. That
because
was
they
wild,
hot air
right?
bag or something. All right. Well, that's Tales of the Jedi. And I want to just kind of sketch out what we're going to be doing next here, which is we will start our Bad Batch binge. If you like the animation in this show, Logan, you're going to love the animation in the Bad Batch because it's very similar. Just really, really well designed characters and just another step up from what we saw in the Clone Wars. And this first episode is really, really cool. But we'll be recording those very shortly. I'm not releasing them until the end of January because we have Skeleton Crew coming up December 3rd. And that will kind of be what we're covering. I don't want to do what we were doing last time with Acolyte and this at the same time. That was kind of a
It's a lot.
strain on my mental
Yeah.
health. Release
Yeah.
editing and releasing them. But these we're going to record ahead of time. So I'm going to tell people right now it's scheduled to be 19 weeks of episodes. So next time when we start the Bad Batch binge, we're going to be discussing just the episode 1 because I believe it is like a extra long episode. Let me pull it up. I believe it was a long 50-minute or something. So I wanted to just discuss this. It's an hour 15. So it's like pretty much a 3-episode arc in one thing. For Bad Batch, so pretty much we're going to be discussing it like we did with the Clone Wars movie as one thing. And then from there, the arcs will range from 2 to 4 episodes that we're talking about, just like it did when we talked Clone Wars. We'll go through the 19 weeks. After we're done that, we'll take another mini break again like we did. We'll do Tales of the Empire as our palate cleanser before we jump into Rebels. And that's kind of how we'll go with these shows. I think I like having the tales as like a little break as we get ready to transition into the next show, especially because Rebels will deal more with the Empire. So kind of having Tales of the Empire and then jumping into that, will be really cool. Yeah. Any questions about Bad Batch or anything? You know the characters from the Clone Wars arc, but didn't know if you had any questions before we wrap it up.
What was your like when like where would you kind of rank it with the shows that they've done? Like if you had to do Clone Wars, Rebels, Bad Batch, like where would you kind of put this? I guess you could throw in Tales too, both Tales. Like where would you kind of place
Um,
it?
I don't know. I always say Rebels is my favorite, but I'll tell you, Bad Batch seasons 2 and 3 have moved that thing up my
Really?
list. I don't know if I can put it one just because I think the first season, while good, there's a lot of like, as you'll see, like there's a few episodes where we are like, I wouldn't say filler, but it's like the standalone
Mm-hmm.
episode, type thing. But like seasons 2 and 3 of that show, Bad Batch, they know exactly what they're doing, and it is some of the best Star Wars animation I've ever
Oh, that'd
seen.
be cool.
Yeah, so and tying up stuff from Clone Wars, setting stuff up for other stuff. Like there's a lot of stuff that it handles in that show that I'm glad we did Clone Wars first, and I'm glad we're doing this before Rebels because there is stuff in here that if we'd waited until after Rebels to do this show, we probably would have
Yeah.
forgotten some stuff. But there is stuff that really just happened in Clone Wars that they bring up again in this that we're like, okay, I understand. Like when I was finishing Bad Batch while we were doing our Clone Wars
Mm-hmm.
watch, and I'm like seeing stuff pop up, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome! Like I just watched that episode of Clone
Yeah.
Wars, so that's one thing I really enjoy about Bad Batch as well. But it could be recency bias, but the animation's also just really great.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for it. It's one of those shows where, again, I think why these shows like Bad Batch and Rebels are really highly ranked for me is because it focuses on one group. So when we're dealing with Bad Batch, we are dealing with the Bad Batch the whole time. We're not really focused on like there's no droid
Right.
episodes like, oh, we're getting our R2-3PO episode this week, or we're getting our Jar Jar episode. Like this show and Rebels will kind of be, we're focused on this group of 5 or however many each week.
Yeah.
We're discussing these people. And I think that will be a benefit for that as well. Yeah. So like I said, Logan and I will start recording those soon. And then those will hit end of January. Which will be nice because I'm actually going to be on a cruise in January. So I'll have content for the podcast while I'm gone. Like that'll be really cool. And then also with the podcast, I've just been saying this as we go. I'm trying to do an Andor Road to Andor season 2 type of thing where we discuss the arcs of the first season of Andor as we build up to April 22nd when Andor season 2 premieres. Yeah, so that'll happen. Then we'll have weekly Andor season 2 episodes on the podcast that'll be the only show or movie that happens next year, unless if they surprise us with one of these Tales of
Mm-hmm.
series or a new animated series after the Bad Batch that they were working on or something. Like, I don't know. Celebration. Star Wars Celebration happens in end of April. So there'll be news, I guess, that'll happen with that, and we'll be able to see if there's any animation coming our way. I hope so. But that's it. Contact us at podawakens on all of our social media, podawakens@gmail.com for long form feedback. Have a great rest of your day, and we will catch you next time when we start talking Skeleton Crew here on the Podawakens.